Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode, known as Sport Mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the fourth race of the second stage of the 2019 Manufacturer Series season, which was a Group 3 race held at the Circuit de Sainte-Croix A circuit. With that, let's get racing. Taking a look at the grid then, you'll see that I qualified third with a 307.1. My story for qualifying, I had a relatively poor session in that I missed my target time of 306.7, which would have been good enough for second, albeit pole position as taken by the Porsche, their 306.2 was in another world compared to the pace I've been able to achieve over a single lap. And I accepted they were perhaps going to be untouchable over this race distance and it would be a race for second place in the end. Now the reason I had a bit of a poor session was I just could not put a good lap together, whether it be my banker lap, alternatively my fast lap. Each lap felt as though it had key parts missing from it which would have made it a good lap, and so I had that overall feeling of having an off day and I was hoping it wasn't going to translate into the race distance. Talking about the race distance, this was a 5-lap sprint race, no fuel saving or pit stops required. Everybody was mandated to use the Racing Hard compound tyre, which took a lot of time to warm up on this circuit. What of the fact the first two corners, so turns 1 and 2, were medium to high speed corners, meaning there'd be very little ability to get warmth into the tyres unless you weaved all over the circuit. And then there was a hard braking zone at turn 3 coming to the end of sector 1, where the lack of warmth in the tyres would be rather interesting in terms of how well you could take that corner. Particularly in my case, because I took a tighter line typically than most other drivers within this 18 car group. There was originally 20, but 2 pulled out going into the race, always being B driver rating. And so I'd have to see how the warmth of the tyres would affect me on the initial lap. And I was hoping that by the time we got to the more interesting sectors of the circuit, so sector 3 onwards, the tyres would be up to warmth and I'd be able to push a bit harder. Because I did like the circuit and felt as though I was on course for a good result. Albeit it felt as though straight away first place was going to be out of the question and it'd be targeting trying to finish second or at least on the podium, trying to stay third and achieve higher if possible. Now about to get underway with the rolling start, and I'd like you to keep an eye on 4th place, the guy behind in the orange Mercedes. It's a Dutchman and there's quite a parallel here. You can imagine that if we're looking at Formula 1 right now, you could call them Max Verstappen, I'm the Lewis Hamilton, albeit we swapped our engine manufacturers, so I'm driving the Honda powered vehicle, they're driving the Mercedes powered vehicle, whereas Lewis and Max have it differently. And as we're about to get underway, we'll be tucking in the slipstream of the Dodge Viper in front, they're tucking in behind the Porsche in front. We're all going to just cannonball down towards the first corner. And what we'll see straight away as we come into the first corner, we're going to hit the braking zone well, but getting that overall tightness into the apex of the corner isn't going to work out because of the coldness of the tyres. The Mercedes behind does a little bit of a better job, goes a tiny bit wider and I'm not gaining too much there. Now coming through the gradual right-hander here at turn 2 and heading up towards turn 3, a sharp left-hander where we've got the hard braking zone. Now you're going to see the difference in the coldness of the tyres because I take that tighter line, which means as I try to get on the power, the rear end slides out, whereas the Mercedes behind takes a wider line. It means I can carry more momentum through the corner. This translates into turn 4, and as we come out to turn 4 going into left-hander at turn 5, they get down the inside and make the move for 3rd place nice and early on. Well done to them. And I back out of it going into turn 6 this right-hander because I'm thinking, look, you're not going to win the race or get your position back over a single corner. It's all about managing the race distance. So I decided at this point just to hang back a little bit, let the tyres get up to warmth because I felt as though the car was still sliding around a lot and it was costing me time already to the guys in front. And I could see looking on the left hand side of my screen that there was roughly a second between myself and 5th place. So it wasn't as though I was under extreme pressure from the pack behind the chasing pack from 5th down to what looks to be roughly 9th or 10th right now. They're forming their own little group. Instead, I just want to tag along the backside of the leader group here, so from 1st down to 4th, I'll be at the back end of that group as we head into turn 11 now, a corner I absolutely love, and I'm going to start analysing what the guy in front of me is doing well and what they're not doing well. And what I've already noticed is I'm starting to gain time on them coming out to turn 11. So I'm thinking, okay, perhaps turn 11 is a bit of a weak corner for them in the Mercedes, or perhaps they're just not confident as a driver of attacking that corner as much as I like to. We'll have to wait and see. Now, of course, another thing as well as we come down to the hard braking zone at turn 12 here, this is a medium speed corner, but you've got to brake hard and then make sure you hit that inner apex, because if you put all four wheels off coming over to the right hand side of the circuit, that's a guaranteed half a second penalty. If you cut the left hander at turn 12, that's a 1 second penalty minimum. And what the effect of the lack of downforce, as implied through running in the slipstream of the Mercedes in front, that only makes life a little bit tougher in going into these high speed braking zones. As we try to go up the inside of the Mercedes going into turn 14, we can't quite make it happen because we weren't able to get enough down the side of them. I didn't feel confident about getting on the throttle and trying to tuck the car up the inside as we went through the apex of the corner there, and that would have pushed them off potentially, and we could have both seen ourselves spin out of the race or have an accident. Now coming down to 15 and 16 here, a right to left slalom, a wonderful set of corners here, and we can see that I'm taking a much cleaner line through the corners, albeit not as much power at the moment. The Mercedes is pushing hard, and I get the feeling they're feeling a bit of pressure from myself right now, but at the same time they want to try and catch up to the Dodge Viper and the Porsche in second and first respectively, so that way they get the benefit of the distant tow. With that region now being out to roughly a second rather than 0.8 seconds, as I discussed in the previous race video. And as we're coming into turn 18 here, I'm noticing as well that coming through 17 into 18, I gained a lot of time on the Mercedes as they go wide coming out of 18. That's going to cost them some straight line speed going down to the final corner at 19. The right hander here, which we take in third gear, braking just before the 100 board, and I'm starting to get that mental picture of how well the Mercedes is going to drive each lap compared to myself. Now, of course, it could be the case that they're just getting what I like to call the first lap jitters, i.e. they're trying to get the car all comfortable and warmed up for themselves, and then they're going to be more aggressive on laps 2, 3, etc. But you never know, they may not feel that confident in running around the circuit at this point in time, or it may just be the way they drive the car around the circuit. As we come through turn 1 here, we don't take the corner as fast as them, but the Dodge Viper in second has spun out, which means we inherit third place, and now it becomes a case of really seeing the Porsche, who was in the lead to begin with, pulling the way off into the distance. I'm unfortunately going to spoil that for you, but there's still a fight on for second place, and trust me, I'm not giving up this fight. So the rest of this race now, we're going to be focusing on purely the action in front of us, trying to get second place back off of the Dutchman. And what I'm doing for these first 3 laps is effectively I'm trying to assess what the Dutchman's doing well and what they're not doing well. So you're not going to see too much aggression from me. I'm actually going to fall back a bit further, because what I want to do is run in some cleaner air, so that way I'm not feeling an extreme slipstream effect going down the straights to the point that it leads to dirty air affecting my downforce, going into the harder braking zones, and therefore putting additional wear through the tyres and costing me lap time. I'd rather be in the region of 1.1 to 1.3 seconds behind the Mercedes, and then when we get onto lap 4, start being very aggressive, because I feel comfortable with the car when it's got a bit of tyre wearing, and as a result of that I can start to make up the time. And I reckoned, based on my knowledge of how the Mercedes SLS drove, that we were roughly even in terms of tyre wear. I knew the Mercedes was very strong in the slipstream, and I'm very happy for the fact they haven't got the Porsche in front of them to use as a tow magnet. So as a result, it is going to be a battle where I'm able to gain the advantage through slipstream, which they haven't got the ability to use. But one thing I did also know is that Mercedes was very fast in terms of acceleration, particularly in the low to medium speed range going up through the gears, so say from first all the way up to fourth. So I really have to make the most of trying to get the best possible acceleration out of every corner and hanging in a slipstream to try and cover that acceleration differential, because they had the better acceleration. But for now, just sitting behind them, I'm noticing they are definitely weaker in sector 3. So beginning at turn 8 and then ending by the point where we're coming down the straight line in towards turn 12, I know I'm stronger there. Going through sector 4 here, we're roughly even. They're getting the better drive out of turn 14, but I'm getting the better drive out of the preceding corner, turn 13. As we come across the bridge into these final 2 sectors, I found, as you're going to see here, that I'm the stronger driver coming through these 2 sectors, not because I'm that much faster than them initially, but it's the fact that I'm getting the cleaner line and I'm not necessarily throwing the back end out coming out of turn 16 in particular, or grazing the wall on the right hand side coming out of 16 right now. Now we both get a clean run out of here. I do get a little bit of wheel spin there, but it doesn't cost me too much time. And we can see as we're coming into the extended right hander now at turn 17, the Mercedes does actually back out of the throttle a little bit, coming out of the second part of turn 17, so this bit here, and that's why I'm gaining so much ground on them coming up into the braking zone for turn 18 at the 100 board. And then as we come around this corner here, you can see they take a gradually wider line I should say. They're naturally doing it based on their driving style, and that means they end up going up onto the grass, and that costs them a tiny bit of speed coming down to the final corner at 19 again, and I can capitalise on that. You can see how close we got to the back end of that Mercedes already over the course of 1 lap. Remember, we started the lap in the region of 1.1 seconds behind them when we went into turn 6 and 7, and now we're only half a second behind them as we go down the straight here to begin lap number 3. Now, building that picture, what I'm also realising is they are much stronger in sector 1 in particular. So I get a good run through turn 1 here, I'm right in their slipstream, but as we come up the hill through turn 2 and then into the hard braking zone for the left hander at turn 3, the corner won't take that tighter line. they are naturally getting a better drive out of the corner because I'm taking that more aggressive entry point, albeit it will put a little bit of pressure on them, thinking that I'm perhaps going to go for a lunge up the inside because I'm naturally leaning towards the inside of that corner. And then going through turn 4 here, they're getting a better drive off the corner. We can see that gap is expanding by a couple of attempts as we now come through turn 5 up into 6 and 7, the double set of right-handers here. I must admit though, in doing this and doing this analysis, what I'm also seeing is that my driving style is becoming more relaxed because I'm starting to get into the rhythm of chasing the guy in front. And I'm not being affected as heavily by the dirty air in front anymore, and I'm actually feeling a bit more confident to run in the slipstream air that's afforded to me, albeit I'm 8 tenths behind them right now, but as I get closer and closer the dirty air effect is going to increase going into the harder braking zones, and I'm not too worried about it compared to previous races where it's really put me off at certain points. Instead I'm getting that confidence, I'm getting that comfort, and I'm getting ready to go on the offensive as we go into lap number 4. We're only halfway through lap number 3, mind. So coming up into turn 11 right now, we can see we were 9 tenths behind the Mercedes as we went into the corner, but look how much time we gain on them coming through the corner here, down to 5 tenths, and that gap is now going to stabilise what them having that straight line acceleration we talked about earlier. As we come charging down the straight here to end sector 3 and go charging into turn 12, you're going to see me brake quite prematurely, if not lift off the throttle, because of the dirty air effect. And the one thing I do not want to do is go cutting the circuit here or off the circuit to pick up a penalty, because that would screw my aspirations of trying to beat the Mercedes completely. Now looking at the time boards on the left hand side, we can see that Stifler's Mum 86, great username, is gradually gaining on myself and the Mercedes. They are pulling roughly a couple of attempts per lap, may even lead up to half a second as we go later into the race. However, they're not too much of a factor. I'm not expecting them unless I make a huge mistake or the pair of us in front, i.e. the Mercedes and I, have an accident. I'm not expecting the German in a Mazda Atenza to come charging out and start contesting for second. This is going to be an isolated battle, and the Porsche in front has disappeared completely, or at least 5 seconds up the road now. So we're keeping that isolated fight, and it works in my favour of course because I'm the one who's the pursuer. I'm in hot pursuit of the target. I've got the slipstream factor coming in, and whilst I do have the dirty air to worry about, as I've previously said, I'm not worrying about that too much. So I'll pull back a little bit as we come into turn 17 this time, but I'm starting to gear myself up now, and we can see how much time we're going to gain against the Mercedes. Again, we're much better going through turn 17 than them, and we're going to translate that into the braking zone for turn 18. They're taking that wider line. I do get a little bit wide of the apex there, but not too much to cost me too much speed, neutralising with the fact the Mercedes went off onto the grass once again. But now it's time to go on the attack. As soon as this lap ends, as we come through turn 19 to complete lap number 3, I'm going to be full pellet, I'm going to be full go mode, and I'm going to try and get second place back over the last 2 laps. Now we are going to switch to the replay camera for the rest of this race because I think it will give you a better perspective of how much I'm pushing and how close I'm getting to the rear end of the Mercedes as time goes on. And also it's always nice to see the circuit from a third person perspective as well as from the onboard footage. So coming through turn 1, nice and cleanly through there, we get it nice and tight on the apex, we don't cut the corner. And as we get towards turn 3 here, what you're going to see is the natural effect again of me taking that tighter inside line. I do consider at some points of perhaps trying to take a little bit of a wider line going through turn 3, but then what I think to myself is if I start to mimic my opponent's driving style going through certain corners, yes it could be beneficial, but I'm also taking a significant risk of suddenly driving off of my preferred line, and by taking that risk what that can mean is I make a mistake that costs me a lot of time, and I know that I am gaining time in other sectors, so I'm not going to worry too much about adapting my driving style in terms of racing lines at this point in the race distance. If it had been earlier, this race was longer, I would have considered experimenting with it for 1 or 2 laps, but as we've only got 5 laps available and only 2 of those left right now, we're not going to be doing that here. And we can see that we're keeping right behind the Mercedes, and the Mazda behind is gradually catching us guys, but not to the point where they're going to be competing. As I said previously, this is an isolated battle for second, and as we come up the hill here towards turn 10, we're going to get this quite nice, albeit the Mercedes are going to get a good run out of the corner as well. And now we're coming into the corner where I feel as I can make a lot of time on the Mercedes, turn 11, so we're going to be coming through here pretty much flat out, lifting very slightly when we initially go into the corner, but then getting on the throttle much earlier, and we can see the Mercedes instantly ducks towards the inside to limit the amount of slipstream exposure I get, but that just goes to show the pace differential going through that corner as we now come down the straight towards turn 12. We're going to try and hit it as hard as possible this corner this time, not backing out as early as we have been previously because I need to make up that time. As we come through 12, you'll see that I just about catch the car before it's going to go off onto the grass, as I've prepared to do so over the course of my race practices, albeit running the slipstream is always going to add that extra factor of the car wanting to go drifting off the circuit. We'll get it under control. Coming out of 13, we are gaining massively on the Mercedes right now. Coming into 14, that gap is potentially going to widen a little bit because they've been getting better drive out of the corner. As we come across the bridge here, we'll see that the gap is a little bit closer as we're charging after them, but not to the point we're able to make an overtaking move. The overtaking move is probably going to come on lap number 5 if it's going to happen at all. But we are starting to apply that pressure, and what I'm hoping to see soon is that the Mercedes is going to make some mistakes or start to go back to their common habit, which we found particularly coming out to 16, of spinning the wheels coming out of the corner or grazing the wall, which will cost them some time, and hopefully we'll see them go onto the grass again coming out to turn 18, which will cost them time. As we now come through 17, the corner which we absolutely love, we are lifting a little bit now coming out of this corner because the car's tyre wear is starting to affect the ability to stay on that inside line. As we come down to the braking zone for 18, we'll get it nice and tight on the apex here. We're following the Mercedes through and see how close we are to the back of them now. Perhaps we could go for a bit of a lunge into turn 19 based on the slipstream effect here as we're getting closer and closer to their backside, but I decide to opt out of it this time. I'm not close enough to make a move as I brake a little bit later than them, and we get it reasonably tight into the apex of the corner, staying right in that slipstream zone now, and it is going to be a pursuit onto the final lap as we stay with the replay camera once more. And what you can see here is I am much closer than on the previous laps. I'm starting to gear myself up. I'm starting to think, right, let's try and make that move. Let's hope they're going to make a mistake. Turn 1, I go a little bit wide, but it doesn't cost me too much time because of the benefit of the slipstream. How about in turn 3? Well, it's their stronger corner. Let's hold back on turn 3 unless we really get alongside them taking our inside line. Let's come up into turn 3. Do we get alongside? Not quite. They just about make the corner before they're able to get down the inside. Okay, so they're going to pull a little bit of distance here as they get a little bit sideways coming out to turn 3. So I'm noticing the pressure is starting to play on them as we come out to 4. So they haven't gained as much ground on us compared to the previous laps, which is ideal. And now we can pursue them through turn 6 and 7. Not really going to be able to make a move here. These corners aren't naturally inclined for making a move. But as we come through 7, we want to be as close as possible, so that way as we go through turns 8 through to 10, we can really maximise the gain we get through turn 11, our strongest corner compared to the Mercedes driver. Albeit I've got to give credit to the Dutchman, they are doing an absolutely fantastic job of holding us off so far. We are both pushing to the limit by looks of things, and hopefully you're seeing that on screen. And as we're coming through turn 8 then, up into 9, and then we're coming for the right hander up the hill on turn 10. You can see they gained a little bit of time, not too much at this point. Hoping to get a clean run through turn 10. I missed the apex bit, could have been tighter then, that would have helped me gain about a tenth on them. And as we come into 11, we've got to nail this corner correctly. Can we do it? Yep, we get nice and tight in the corner there. We get a very tight line. We get on the throttle and look how much time we've gained on them once again. Now we're coming down the hill towards turn 12. Very long straight here. We're going to use the slipstream as we're both over to the right side. Mercedes pulls out a little bit into the centre of the track just to prepare themselves for turn 12. They're not really weaving about. I'm considering, do I go for a move here? But it's too risky to try and charge down the inside. So I instead opt to stand behind the Mercedes, come through 12, get a clean run through here. Albeit I did back out a little bit too much there, and I've actually lost some ground towards the Mercedes. But a bit more aggressive perhaps through there, we're a bit more experienced, and we come through 13 right behind them right now. Albeit I get a little bit sideways coming out the corner, and that's where I'm getting on the throttle a bit too soon, getting a bit impatient now, and we've got to come through 14 here. We're going to accept the fact that Mercedes will pull some ground less because they were better at taking the corner. As I get sideways again, I'm getting very impatient on that throttle because I really want to close that distance down and try and make the move. And we can see we're weaving about on the bridge now, trying to follow the slipstream of the Mercedes. They know I'm benefiting massively from the tow. As we come down to 15 and 16, the slalom from right to left. Can we get a clean run through here? We get a much tighter line through 15, and we follow the Mercedes through on 16. They make a clean line out of 16 coming into turn 17, but this is where we can gain once again, and we'll be lifting a little bit because tyre wear is adding up at this point. But look how close we can follow them through this corner as they take a wider line and then have to get it to the inside, whereas I'm full throttle coming out of the second half of turn 17. Now coming into 18, can we get right in behind them as we come out of 18? Will we get a good exit out of 18? They do not, and they go on the grass, albeit we're not quite close enough as we switch back to the onboard. Can we make a move into the final corner? We've got a lot of slipstream power, we've got a lot of straight line speed, and they're pulling over to the left hand side. I'm going to look down the inside thinking about the move, but unfortunately just not close enough. So in the end we have to stamp on the brake. We do graze the left hand wall here right at the end, our only knock on the wall, but that unfortunately spells the end of the race, and we have to bring the NSX home in a wonderful third place. Having had time to reflect, whilst I clearly had an off day here, at the same time I can't grumble at the final result, as to have an off day and bring the car home on the podium is still a solid result and something that we can take as a positive. On top of that, I gained a lot of experience in running in the dirty air of another car, not just for one lap but multiple laps, and I can add that experience to my racing inventory and draw upon it in the future races when the situation applies. And I must again praise the Dutchman and the Mercedes who finished second for an absolutely fantastic race, a very difficult one but at the same time great racing, and it was a shame we didn't have one more lap because I reckon I could have got them perhaps if we had a sixth lap. But that's something we'll just have to put down to theory. With that, we'll need to now move on to the fifth race of this stage of the Manufacturer Series, which will take place at the Alsace Village Circuit on Saturday the 17th of August 2019. Until then, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future episodes. As always, I've been TX141, and until next time, take care and drive safely.